my name is Mel. This is Create and Company, and this is where we creatives get together to work on our creative projects and bring them into reality with more confidence, with more focus, consistency, and flow. Today, we continue with the book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rubin. You see it back there as well. And this chapter is called Seeds. Seeds. In the first phase of the creative project, we are to be completely open, collecting anything we find of interest. So here he's reminding us that there's a phase in which you benefit from collecting a lot of little pieces and not judging yet or deciding yet where they're going to go or how good they are or what you're going to do with them. Think of yourself like walking through the forest with a little satchel, and you're collecting seeds from different plants, from different trees. And you don't know which one's gonna take root later where you live when you take it back home. You don't know, but what he says is that the more seeds you gather, the better. Because if you just gather one, you have no point of comparison. And in my opinion, maybe too much pressure will rest on that one or two seeds. So he says to gather hundreds. And he says that seeds can be anything from a phrase, a melody, a bass line, a rhythmic feel, a sentence, a character, a sketch, a setting, a thesis, a plot line. If you're more of a visual artist, maybe it's a shape, it's a color, maybe it's a material, maybe it's a technique. So gather seeds. And he says that you just gather them. You're not supposed to do anything with them in this phase, and that you don't have to put much effort into it. It's like a receiving of a transmission. It's a noticing. Remember how earlier in the book he talked about paying attention being a creative act, a way of being? Paying attention, noticing. And as the seeds arrive, forming conclusions about their value or fate can get in the way of their natural potential. And he says that so many seeds might not look like they're going to be much right now, but later they will, they'll sprout. Have any of you planted real seeds in the earth? Comment below if you have. I have, and it is that really mysterious, exciting, cool process where you plant them and not all of them sprout. And some sprout and then they don't fully grow to the fruited plant. So the more you have, the more chances you have. And he says in the initial stage, it's important to not even have that specific vision of what a seed will become. That limits you. Placing too much emphasis on a seed or dismissing it prematurely can interfere with its natural growth. The temptation to insert too much of yourself in this first phase can undermine the entire enterprise. Be wary of taking shortcuts or crossing items off your list too quickly. Remember how we talked about the open-mindedness of a child and not pre-deciding where and what boxes they go into in your mind and your understanding? Here, that childlike innocence, curiosity, and open-mindedness will serve us as well. At the very end, he says that sometimes the purpose of a seed is to propel us in a completely new direction. Along the way, it may morph into something hardly resembling its original form and become our finest work. At this point in time, it's helpful to think of the works as bigger than us, to cultivate a sense of awe and wonder at what's possible, and recognize that this productivity is not generated by our hand alone, something bigger. So that was the mini chapter on seeds summarized. What seeds have you collected in life? How do you collect seeds? When do you most notice you're collecting seeds? I want to add that if you have one place where you put your seeds, that would support you in being more aware of this process of the seed collecting, seed noticing, and it will make it easier to come back to it later to review them for the next phases. For example, one way I collect seeds is I put them on a notes on this phone. I tend to put them on what is called reminders. It's a built-in app that You can even like check them off once you've applied them or used them. You can date them, you can put them in color coded, you can prioritize them in different levels. So that's one of my seed collections. And I have different lists for different books and different projects. Another seed I have, and if you're not doing this one, I find it to be one of the most effective, is I have a folder in my photos on my phone as well. So when I see a seed, be it video, be it a snapshot I took or something I took off the internet, like a reminder that I screenshot off the internet, I will put it in that folder. And that will be the folder for that project or that area in my life. So you can do a list written on your phone. You can do a folder on your phone. I know a lot of people like to do it on Pinterest as well. Pinterest is really cool for recommending similar things to what you love. And you can make it private or public. I also find that even like an analog old school real box, like, for example, I'm going to show you one of my seed collections. This is a little potpourri container that I got at a Goodwill, and I collect messages here. Some are, you know, at the top of your tea bags, you get a little message. Some are fortune cookie messages. Some are written by me from books I read or conversations I had. This one, for example, is called Be the Bright Light, it says. So when I need a little bit of guidance, inspiration, or I want to share a special moment with someone, I will shake this up and have them or me draw from it. So this is one of my seed collections. Maybe one of your seed collections is in a totally different format. Maybe it's a sketchbook where you put in your beginnings of ideas. Or maybe it's, what is it for you? So I'd love to hear in the comments below, how do you collect seeds? What seeds have you collected recently? And can you be non-judgmental in this phase? Or what are you learning about in the seeds phase? Because remember, he says this is where you remain completely open. You let more things in than usual. You collect anything you find of interest, and you don't try to shape it yet. You don't try to compare it to find the best seed. You simply gather them. The next, okay, well, there was one of those, I call it poems, one of these messages on its own page here that Rick Rubin shares. The work reveals itself as you go. The work reveals itself as you go. That is very cool because often when we have perfectionism holding us back, we think we can't take another step until we know the 10 or 20 or 100 steps after that. And that's not the way the creative process works from my experience. It's that whole, have you heard that quote? Something about like, take the first step and the staircase will reveal itself. Very similar. The work reveals itself as you go. So keep moving. In this case, from the seed phase to the next phase, experimentation. We have collected a handful of seeds, of starting points, and potentialities. We now enter the second stage, the experimentation phase. Fueled by the initial hit of excitement at discovering a starting point, we play with different combinations and possibilities to see if any of them reveal how the seed wants to develop. So very cool that he gives the power back to the seed, back to the work and its own development. And check this out, everyone. There's no right way to experiment, he says. So remember how we had a whole mini chapter on rules? Throw those out the window, experiment like a kid. Experiments are the way you interact with something to figure it out, to learn about it, to see what it is and poke at it and smell it and use all your senses and find out what this thing is and where it wants to go. So no right way. Generally speaking, we want to begin interacting with the seeds, developing our starting point in different directions. This is one of the most fun parts of the project, he says, because nothing is at stake, meaning there's not a lot to lose right now. It's not like you have a huge draft and you're about to decide like how it finishes the story, or you're not about to put like the final paint touch on something that would be very hard to remove. You're at the beginning and you get to play with forms and see what takes shape, he says. There are no rules. Cultivation will look different for every artist and every seed. we focus, okay, here later he says that you're not trying to edit it. You know, he says we focus on the flourishing and then we wait to prune. Has anyone here ever grown a plant and sometimes you prune off like the dry leaves, or you prune off an overgrowth? Or if you've gardened, I learned, for example, that some basil, for example, you got to prune the flower so that it doesn't go to seed, like so it just keeps growing still. So either way, if you're in touch with nature, you know that there is such a thing as pruning. Or if you've worked a bonsai, you know a bonsai gets pruned. And here he says wait to prune. Actually let things flourish, let them go in all directions, let them overgrow in a way. We generate possibilities instead of eliminating them. So well said. We generate possibilities instead of eliminating them. And then he has a piece here on page 151 about how many things in our world came from experimentation or an accident. Like, for example, he says, consider how many innovations that might have changed the world would have been lost because someone was so focused on their goal, they missed the revelation right in front of them. So he says, like the Chinese were trying to work on something that helps for immortality, and they mixed saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, and then they got gunpowder. And then other inventions like penicillin, plastic pacemakers, Post-it notes, lots of P's, they were discovered by accident. So let this be almost like, yeah, let this be fun. Let this be discovery. Let the unknown be shown to you. Don't think you know and force a direction of this seed. And he says, take advantage of the energy inherent in the seed itself. Those of you who love nature, you probably know that a seed has energy inside of it, and it has so much information inside of it. Well, everything has energy, but a seed has a lot of energy. And he says that do whatever is possible to not disturb it. Don't get in the way. You may be tempted to intervene and steer its development toward a specific goal or preconceived idea, but this may not lead to the most productive of its possibilities at this stage in the process. You know what? I'm feeling to share that even though I'm not a mother of a human child yet, I think it's really cool that there's a phase for this for children too, to not oversteer them in the direction you want them to go in, to see and observe where their own proclivities or talents or interests are taking them. And many times we do consider our creative projects our children. And then here's something he says, for all of us that are worried that our seed isn't going anywhere in the experimentation phase, he says to not consider, like he says, if a seed does not seem to be developing or responding, consider storing it rather than discarding it. Storing it rather than discarding it. There are many projects that just need to come back a little later. And he says, if the energy continues to drop about a seed, it does not necessarily mean that the seed is bad. We just may not have found the right experiment for it. So keep an open mind about how to experiment with it. Okay, I love this quote. It reminds me of a song quote I like. He says, being open to possibility gets you to a place you want to go that you may not know you wanted to get to. Have you all heard that song that says, like, I haven't found what I'm looking for. I just haven't found what I'm looking for yet. So there's some of that here. If you know what you want to do and you do it, that's the work of a craftsman. If you begin with a question and use it to guide an adventure of discovery, that's the work of an artist. So I hadn't heard it put that way before. Do you consider, like, are you more of a craftsman or an artist? It feels like in an artist's path, there's a little more surrender to the mystery, and there's more listening to the work that could turn into something different than what you thought it was going to be. Okay. He says, here's something cool about when a plant is flourishing, we can see the life spring forth from every stalk, leaf, and flower. How do we know when an idea is flourishing? And he tells us to listen in on when it arouses delight. It's an energizing feeling of wanting more, a feeling of leaning forward. Follow that energy. So as you have all these seeds and now you're starting to experiment, the filter or the guide criteria he shares is that an idea is starting to flourish when you feel that It arouses delight, energizing. You want more, you lean forward, keep going. And he says, here we follow the heart. At some point, we may be able to look back and understand why the feeling arose. Other times we will not. That's fine too. For now, that is of no concern. So he says, don't use the head work of analysis yet. Don't be rational. Don't plan ahead that much. Just see which seeds and which experimentation of which seeds is telling your heart that this is the way. Base decisions on the internal feeling of being moved and notice what holds your interest. This also sounds like dating, like trusting your heart. Like, let's say seeds were like a bunch of dates you went on with different people. Experimentation is maybe going on different kinds of dates, or maybe talking about different things on different dates, or dressing differently, or being open-minded. And now it's, which one is making me want to lean forward? Where do I want to be more? What is my heart telling me? Okay, the next mini chapter within this 15-page chunk is called Try Everything. Try everything. So he says, there is a gap between imagination and reality. An idea might seem brilliant in our mind, but once employed, it might not work at all. Another might seem dreary at first, and then upon execution, it might be exactly what's called for. So here, those opposites unite again. Things are not as they seem is what I'm hearing here. Try everything because things might be looking like they're not working, and then suddenly they do work. So there's like a don't give up energy here. And he says that to dismiss an idea because it doesn't work in your mind is to do a disservice to the art. The only way to truly know if any idea works is to test it. And if you're looking for the best idea, test everything. So this sounds like a continuation on experimentation and a very inclusive approach to the experimentation. And he says to ask yourself as many what if questions as you can, which again is that inner child, that free child that's like, what if this could work? Or what if I tried it this way? Or what if, like, not sticking to how it's always been done. Instead of talking through different solutions to work which is best, take it out of the realm of the verbal and put your hand, like, that's one of the teachings he puts at the bottom of page 158. Often we think we've tried everything when we're up here about it. Have you guys ever seen those memes where like the person's thinking and you see all the mathematical equations come out like that? I feel like that's what a lot of us might think we're doing when we are experimenting here. But I think it's really wise of Rubin here to say, like, take it out of the verbal, take it out of the imagination, and try it with your hands. Like, remember when we were in science class and we did experiments? We did them in person and we used a lot of our senses. So definitely try everything in person and give yourself permission to be wrong and experience the joy of being surprised. So already we are melting away that perfectionism, melting away the control, the predictability, and a lot of plans. This is not planning. This is, hey, we've got a bunch of cool seeds. Let's experiment. Let's play. Let's try it out. Let's try everything. He says, allow the work to grow in the direction it seeks. Allow the work to grow in the direction it seeks. Evolve in accordance with its natural state and have its own life. Enjoy the journey of cycling through all permutations to reveal a work's true form. Another image I just got is like, let's say you have a lock, you know, the ones with the 3 numbers you twist. Think of how many permutations of mix there is there, and eventually it has its own nature where it will open. Your lock will open because you got to one of the many permutations, so try them all. Not everyone has the time and patience to go through every single one, and most locks lock on themselves if you do, but that was just a metaphor. You get my drift. So those were the 3 mini chapters for today. We had seeds, experimentation, and try everything. I want to know which new learnings are you going to apply to your creative process, your creative projects. What did you learn? What did you agree with? What do you have questions about? What is going on over on your side? So please comment below or email me at creatingcompany@gmail.com. And if you like this video, let's grow this community. You can subscribe, you can like it. That'll help me see that you like this kind of video. And if you want to forward the link to a friend who's creative or who you know wants to be more creative, that would be really cool too. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.